Today, we're diving into the really high-stakes world of digital borders. The internet was supposed to be this single global space, right? But now there's a whole new reality of competing international data laws, and it's forcing every global business to ask one critical question: who really controls your data?
Okay, so before we really jump in, we've got to get the mandatory disclaimer out of the way. This overview is based on a super comprehensive report on the Cloud Act and data sovereignty from Virtualization Options LLC. But, and this is important, it is not legal advice. The laws around the world are incredibly complex, so you should always consult legal pros who are familiar with all the jurisdictions involved. All right, let's get right into it. For the longest time, we all thought of the internet as this one big, borderless world. But that idea, it's changing, and it's changing fast. We are now living in an era of digital frontiers, where the physical location of your data has become this major strategic issue, something that's moved right out of the server room and into the boardroom. To really get a sense of just how big this is, check out this number. By 2025, the world is projected to store over 200 zettabytes of data in the cloud. Now, just to put that in perspective, a single zettabyte is a trillion gigabytes. So yeah, we're talking about a completely astronomical amount of information. It's literally the lifeblood of the entire global economy. And all that data isn't just sitting still, right? It's zipping across physical borders every single second. And that creates the fundamental tension we're digging into today. Who's actually in control? Is it the company that created the data, the cloud provider who stores it, or is it the country where the servers physically happen to be? So to even begin to navigate this, there are two key ideas you've got to get. First, you've got data residency. That's the easy one. It's just the physical where. Think of it as the street address of the data center. But then you've got data sovereignty. That's the legal reality. It's all about whose authority that data falls under. One's a simple technical fact, and the other is a legal minefield. And that leads us right to the heart of the matter, the U.S. Cloud Act. This is the piece of legislation that just fundamentally rewrote the rules for data access and kicked off a huge global chain reaction. So let's break down what it is. Okay, so here it is in a nutshell. The Cloud Act was passed back in 2018 to basically update some really old laws for our modern cloud era. But here's the kicker. Step 2. It gives U.S. law enforcement the power to demand data from U.S.-based tech companies, even if that data is stored on servers in another country, say in Germany or Japan. So what does this law actually do? Well, its reach is truly global, but this next part, this is the absolute key. It makes the physical location of the data totally irrelevant. The focus is now on the company that controls the data. If a U.S. company is in control, U.S. law can reach it, though it does still require proper judicial oversight, like a warrant. So how on earth did we get here? Well, the old law from 1986. That was written before most of us even knew what the web was. The whole issue really came to a head in a famous case where the U.S. government tried to make Microsoft hand over emails they were storing in Ireland. That huge legal battle proved the old rules were broken, and it led directly to the Cloud Act in 2018. Now, this is where things get really complicated. See, the Cloud Act didn't just solve a U.S. problem. It created a global one. It basically set U.S. law on a collision course with the data privacy laws of pretty much every other nation. And this slide, man, this lays out the conflict perfectly. On one hand, you have the U.S. Cloud Act, which can legally compel a company to hand over data. But at the exact same time, you've got Europe's GDPR, which can make that very same action completely illegal. This puts companies in this impossible situation, a total catch-22, where following one law means you're breaking another. So you can probably guess what happened next, right? The rest of the world didn't just sit back. As you can see from this chart, countries everywhere started writing their own data sovereignty laws, often demanding that data be stored locally. The number of countries with these laws has more than doubled in just a handful of years, as nations rush to stake their claim in their own digital territory. And if you think this is all just some abstract legal theory, think again. The stakes are incredibly high. Look at this number, $1.2 billion. That's not a projection. That was a single real-world fine handed to a major company for illegal data transfers. The financial risk of getting this wrong is absolutely massive. So if you're a company caught in this legal crossfire, what can you possibly do? Well, this brings us to a technical line of defense, using encryption as a kind of shield in a legal battle.
But here's the thing, not all encryption is created equal. It all boils down to one simple, crucial question: who holds the keys? If your cloud provider manages your encryption keys, well, they can be legally forced to use them and hand over your data in a readable format. But if you, the customer, are the only one holding the keys, the provider technically can't comply with an order to decrypt your data. They just don't have the ability.
You'd think everyone would be doing this, right? Well, here's the reality check. This slide shows a huge gap. Almost every company, 94%, uses some kind of encryption. But look closer. Only 38% use the more advanced methods, where they actually control their own keys. That means the vast majority of companies are still wide open to this specific legal risk.
So let's answer the big question. Can encryption actually protect you? The answer is kind of. It's a yes, but. It is only an effective technical defense if you, the customer, have exclusive control of the keys. Now, this doesn't make the legal request go away, but it can help solve that GDPR catch-22. It lets a company argue that they've done everything technically possible to safeguard the data, basically forcing the authorities to go after the data owner directly. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problem and a potential defense. Let's switch gears and build this into an actual, actionable playbook. For every executive watching this, here's how you can start moving your organization from a state of risk to one of resilience. Here's what you can do starting tomorrow. Think of it as your first 90 days. First up, audit and assess. You have to know what data you have and where it's flowing. Next, dive into your cloud contracts and policies. And by month 3, you should be putting a clear key management policy into practice and training your teams on it. And look, these are the questions that need to be on your board's agenda like yesterday. Where is our most sensitive data stored? Who can access it? And what legal process do they have to follow? And maybe most importantly, which country's laws actually apply to our data? If you can't answer these, you've got a major blind spot. You know, there's a quote from the report we base this on that it hits the nail on the head. There is no perfect or permanent solution to data sovereignty challenges, only ongoing risk management and vigilance. This isn't a problem you just solve once. The whole legal and tech landscape is always shifting. The only real answer is to be constantly vigilant. So we'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. Most of our global businesses were built for that dream of a borderless world. But that's not the world we live in anymore. We live in a world of digital borders. And the question you have to ask yourself is your data strategy ready for it?